meeting is being recorded.
Hi, Black Student. I already messed up. Hi, Black Student Forum. I'm here with Sarah Onyango, and today we are interviewing for our event. So, would you like to introduce yourself or give a quick bio or some of your accomplishments?
Yeah, I I don't like talking about my accomplishments. Uh, I just call it stuff I've done or been involved with. So my name is Sarah Onyango, and as you can, guess by my last name, I am African. I'm from the continent. I'm from Kenya, actually. Very proud of that. Land of runners, marathons. We own that. I'm just saying. I've been living in Canada for the better part of 30 years, I guess. I came to Canada when I was 14 with my family. My dad was a diplomat, and so he was at our High Commission or embassy here. And I went to high school here. I went to Elmwood. Yes, we wore uniforms. Which was fine by me because in Kenya, everybody wears uniforms. So it's not a big deal. Anyway, so I did the last 3 years of high school. I was 17 when I got to university. I did grade 12 and 13 together the same year because my parents were leaving. They were going back to Africa on my dad's next posting, and they wanted to make sure that I got into a good university. So basically, I had no life for the better part of like a year and a half, studying like 2 grades to graduate and go to university. I went to Ottawa U. I studied linguistics and translation, and I'm a translator. That's what I've done um, most of my life, pretty much.
And my first real question for you is, why do you feel that it's essential to be involved with the Black community here in Ottawa?
Oh my goodness. So, um, in my case, it was a journey to reconnecting with myself. I was married to someone of European descent, a French Canadian, and we lived in a neighborhood in Gatineau back then. This was the early 90s. There were like no Black people out there. I had the one neighbor, and then she moved months later. And I felt very lost. And I noticed that I would be on public transportation. I didn't really see Black people, and it felt very, very lonely. And having come from Kenya as a grown up, you go from being in a in an environment where pretty much everybody's Black, and you just feel at home because you don't feel that your race is something that sets you apart. And then you go from that to a setting where most people are some white people, and you just feel out of place. So I said to myself, okay, well, we're the Black people. uh, I'm not going to go looking for them in church. um, Wait a minute, there's got to be some sort of community center or something where they all congregate or do activities. So I literally went to downtown Ottawa, walking around looking for a community center where there were some Black people. And initially, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to go volunteer. I was just thinking, I want to be around some Black people because that's what I need right now. I ended up walking through the doors of the Harambee Center, which used to be in what is the building, which is now Centennial Public School over on Bay, not far from Chinatown. So I walked in there, and it was crawling with some Black people, and they had courses and workshops and music, and they even had a newspaper, a community newspaper that they published out of there. And I'm in media. That's always been my first love, not translation, media. So I started talking to people. Next thing I know, I was offering to volunteer to help with um, people writing resumes, people wanting to be coached to do job interviews, and volunteering to work on the newspaper called The Drum. So that's how my involvement started. It really started out of a need to connect to
Mm-hmm.
people who looked like me, who didn't necessarily sound like me, but just to feel, like you're yourself. You can be
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Yeah.
And
So that answers your question in a way, because
mm-hmm.
it's a way to uh feel comfortable in your own skin. I know it's an external thing. You need to work on yourself
Mm-hmm.
to create that comfort within yourself. But being involved in the Black community reinforces the confidence in your culture, the sense of belonging, the sense of worth. It reinforces all of that. When you're around your own people, nobody's going to hate on you because, you got too much melanin on, or you've got some of these on your head, or no, you know, they'll just say, "Hey, what's up? What are your interests? Okay, want to work together? Hey."
Nice. And hmm, back then, how did you get to where you are today? Like your current projects? Was it expected, or did you run into some bumps along the way? Did you always
Okay,
know you were going to
so
be a journalist?
how
Or
did I get to where I am today professionally or in my community work?
let's go with community work.
Yeah, and it's work. It's being volunteer, unpaid, that is,
Mm-hmm.
most of these almost 30 years now. But for me, I approached it as if it was a job, like like professional. Because in my mind, volunteering is networking, volunteering is creating opportunities for yourself to grow as a person, but also professionally. And it's also a way to do what you like without having to put in a CV or whatever and wait for a paycheck for it. You actually go and do work that you like, that's gratifying. So I started with Harambe Center, with the tutoring, with the helping with the paper, etc. And then while I was volunteering with that paper, I learned about a Black newspaper called The Spectrum, which ran from 1983, I believe, to 2009. It was the only English language Black newspaper that Ottawa ever had, like continuously published in English and Black focused, Black owned. There hasn't been another one since, really, of that kind. So I wrote to the publisher, Ewart Walters, and next thing I know, I'm writing for that paper too. So my community media career was sort of, there was a lot of intentional accidents.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds weird, doesn't it? It's not like I planned, like I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to look for this paper. No, it was intentional. One thing would lead to something else. A meeting with somebody would lead to an opportunity. That opportunity would lead to another contact and another opportunity, etc., etc. So, working with those two newspapers opened up my network to many, many more other Black people doing different things. And I eventually ended up taking interest in community radio. I'd already done a little bit in France when I was studying there, but I found out that at my alma mater, University of Ottawa, they had this community radio station, and on Saturdays it was all these Black shows. And I kind of got hooked on that because, in a way, it was my window on the Black community. All these different Black people doing news, doing music, doing interviews, etc. And one day, this is really strange how this happened. Um, I was dating this guy who was like a total hater, and I was listening to a particular show, and I was complaining about something, and he goes, "Okay, smarty pants, if you're all that, why don't you just call them and you join the show and do it the way you would do it?" And I said, just because he said that, um, I'm gonna do that. And that's what I did. I called him up, just like cold like that, just gangster like that. I just called him up. I said, listen, love your show. It is awesome. You guys talk about really interesting things. Your music is great, but you don't have an African person up in there. And I'm not hearing that African perspective. Keep in mind, this is the early 90s. And this is, well, no, not the early, it's late 90s. And a lot of Somalis had been coming in, a lot of Somalis, Ethiopians, Eritreans, etc. I wasn't hearing those voices. I wasn't hearing my voice. All I heard was Caribbean voices. And so they said, hmm, okay, you're bold, but you've got a point. Okay. So they kind of auditioned me, like, you know, at a restaurant. And next thing I know, they said, when can you start? I was like, what? I seriously did not think they would agree. And they were like, no, wait, when can you start? And I've been with Black on Black for 23 years now, I think.
Black, yeah. Um, I assume you took on some leadership role in Black on Black. Yeah. How does it feel?
Well, okay, so um, Black on Black is a collective.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's a leader in that
Mm-hmm.
group. It's a group of strong Black women. Each of us have different areas of expertise and interest. And each of us, has their strengths. And so the leadership is in terms of taking turns producing the show,
Mm-hmm.
like taking turns being responsible for the show, the content, the ads, the flow, the everything, booking the interviews, making sure the equipment is correct or whatever, and then hosting the actual thing live on the air. So in terms of leadership, yes, because you learn to be responsible because you very quickly understand because once you get off the air, you go into the community, you better believe there's auntie and uncle and so in the barbershop and hair salon saying, "Oh, I was listening to you on Black on Black. Why did you blah blah blah?" So people are listening. So you are responsible for the content. You have to make sure that you do something that sounds professional, that doesn't contain, like swear words and all of this and all of that. And that's meaningful to the community you are supposed to be serving. So in that sense, it did sort of build my leadership skills in terms of, being organized, having a vision for the direction you want for for that particular show you're responsible for, getting all the elements together and then seeing the show through to the final product kind of thing. And then of course, once you've been on that show for long enough, then people look to you because Black people here in the National Capital Region, we don't have a lot of um, broadcasting spaces where our voices can express themselves freely and where we actually have a lot of agency in terms of how our stories and our image and our experiences are presented. Community media is that space. And that's why I've stayed there so that I can keep providing that platform for, different voices, the marginalized voices, racialized women, LGBTQ plus, etc., who otherwise would not have that platform to share their work, their advocacy, their initiatives with the rest of the community. I
I
don't
guess,
know if that answers your question.
no, no, you're good. Yeah. I was gonna ask what you wish you knew before providing such a platform and um, representing your people in the public eye. What do you wish you knew before you took on that role?
I keep losing bits of what you're asking.
Sorry. All right. What do you wish you knew before providing such a platform, before representing your people, before all of that? What do you wish you knew before taking on such a role on Black on Black?
Um, hmm, that's hard to say. I know in the beginning, I wished I had really gotten a better sense of just how much people are listening. I wish I'd also um, understood that not everybody's happy that you're on there. Not everybody's happy that you're able to, to be on that platform and to offer that platform to others. And not everybody likes what you're presenting. For example, when I mentioned the LGBTQ uh, 2S plus community the other day, just recently, I I talked about the fact that it was Pride, it's Pride Month, Happy Pride, and I gave some events that were happening that Capital Pride organized this year, some film screenings, etc., etc. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as I signed off, the phone rang, and this obviously elderly lady and black lady blasted me, blasted me. She was yelling on the phone, you know. Why are you telling black people to go to these things? Don't you know that this is the devil's work? And da 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 da. And she just blasting and blasting, blasting. I wasn't prepared for, so I wish I had a better sense. But the thing is, you very quickly learn to check your ego at the door. Very quickly. Like, just right away understand that, again, you're there to do a job. You have a responsibility, and you are a conduit. Ain't about you. It's not you. It's not about you. So check that ego right there and make sure you are focused on the goal. And the goal is to inform, entertain, empower. Black on Black really is about empower.
Mm. You seem to take a lot of initiative and possess a lot of traits of a good leader.
I
Um,
can't really, for some reason, I can't hear you. Yeah.
yeah, you seem to possess a lot of initiative and a lot of traits of a good leader. I was gonna ask if there was anyone growing up that you think you would credit that to. Did you have any mentors that you want to speak about, or
Well, growing up, there was my mom. Like,
yeah,
I mean, you grow up in an African household, the mothers, the aunts are the ones that are very, very present in a child's life because they're doing everything for everybody with the baby on the back and another one over here, and they've got a broom over here, and they've got the handbag, and they're going to the market, and so selflessness, that is my mom, you know, and uh, perseverance, again, both my parents and my grandparents. I have grandparents who were actually there when the first white people arrived in their village, right? My granddad was like 109 or something when he died. So he, like, he remembered like seeing these white people come traipsing through and all of that. And my grandparents lived through colonialization. So, when you hear what they went through, and yet they sucked it up and soldiered on and persevered and made something of themselves, and then made something of their family,
mm,
us, you know. Uh, but in terms of volunteer work here in Ottawa, um, I just have this beloved mentor, John, the late John Dennison, who at one point I was going through a rut. Like I had reached, there comes a point where you feel like you're just, um, like in a hamster wheel, and you're not heading anywhere, you're not going anywhere. You don't see, this was at like the 10-year point or something like that, where I felt I wasn't progressing. I didn't feel I was making the impact I felt I should be making in the community. Meanwhile, here is this gentleman, this older gentleman who had been watching me. So this is another lesson, young people. Whatever you're doing, assume there's somebody there who's watching what you're doing, who might actually be interested in helping you get to that next level and improve yourself and create even more opportunities for yourself. So this gentleman had watched me, and he said, listen, I know you don't know me that well, but I have observed you for the last 5 years or so, and I really admire the work you're doing, except I feel you now need to move on to the next level. You can't just be doing this little stuff. So I'd like to mentor you. And before I do that, I just want to know if you're open to that. I was so stunned. I was like, what? Like, what is this? And then the little voice said, you know what? What do you have to lose? You're in a rut. You basically don't know what you're doing anymore. You don't even know if this is what you want to keep doing. Give it a shot. Here's an opportunity. Let's go. Oh my goodness. The mentorship of that gentleman took me to levels I can't even, I just even don't understand it. You know how sometimes you feel like God sends guardian angels and people who just, wind beneath your wings, all that stuff? That was him. So I went from doing little community stuff or whatever to emceeing for Governor General Michaëlle Jean when she was Governor General, her first Black History Month event, her official one in Ottawa. That was me up there emceeing that for her. I was involved with the Mathieu de Costa initiative because Mr. Dennison was, one of the instigators of that, and he was responsible for that at Canadian Heritage. So he made sure that he created opportunities for me to also go and MC that, and fly to Quebec City, fly to Halifax, fly to Winnipeg, fly to, and on and on and on and on until he unfortunately passed away. He kept always looking for opportunities where I could grow and learn and get more exposure. And I just can't say enough for how he completely changed my life. And I've met people I otherwise would not have ever met without his mentorship and his guidance. And he also was someone who, because he had, to a certain extent, followed a bit of my path, he was able to tell me, nope, you don't want to do that, because here's a possible scenario from experience. So he kept me on the right track for all those years. That was about 15 years of just straight up, consistent mentorship that really changed my life. And of course, June Gervin, who is still with us, thank goodness. Every Child is Sacred. She's like the mother of the community in a way, a Jamaican lady who came to Ottawa in the 1950s, an educator who, just the wisdom, because my parents aren't here. So a lot of us, we end up being adopted by the older adults in the community.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you have to be open to that sort of involvement of these other people in your life. Because if you're closed off, and if you're like, I know what I'm doing, what are you trying to tell me? You know, why are you trying to tell me how to do this? I'm doing it my way. If you're not open, then you miss out.
As as someone who has a lot of experience working with the Black community and in the Black community, why
Mhm.
do you think unity within the Black diaspora is so important?
Oh, we have these discussions. Oh my God. Because I'm a Pan Africanist at heart. And, you know, and I was raised by a Pan Africanist father, you know, in a home where we saw everybody, you know. We saw people from the Sahel, we saw Jamaicans, we saw Francophones, Anglophones, Arabic speaking, all kinds. Um, that whole concept of unity is tricky
Mm-hmm.
because we don't talk about unity of white people. We don't. Africa is a continent with over 50 independent sovereign states, thousands literally of languages, and almost as many cultural traditions. And we're not going to even go into the tribes, okay? And what colonialism has done to a lot of those groupings on the continent. So for me, unity is kind of, I don't know, it's very abstract.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like togetherness as opposed to unity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like words like togetherness, solidarity. To me, solidarity is what it is that we're looking for when we talk about unity, because unity implies, okay, we're beige. We're just beige. We're not gonna even take into account, people's specific, specificity and all of that. Solidarity and togetherness is what the Black community needs. I work on that all the time, every day, whether it's when I get on the air. I actually also host a show in French so that I can reach out to the francophones and act as a bridge between the francophones and the anglophones, because in our community we have those solitudes,
Mm-hmm.
based on colonial linguistic traditions. um, and I think that we should unite around common interests, common issues. So for example, there was a time back in like the early 90s, the 80s, when there was this thing between Caribbeans and Somalis where, because the Caribbeans hadn't been exposed to Somalis and their language and traditions and Islam and whatever, they kind of stood away from them. And when the Somalis were being attacked in the media, the Caribbeans would also pile on. I'm not saying all of the Caribbeans, but some of the Caribbeans would pile on with the same criticism of that community. But then the children of those Somalis who came and the children of the Caribbean people, they went to school together and they started having the same issues of racism in the school setting, uh, police harassment, and then the gang violence started
Mm-hmm.
back in the 90s. And it affected everybody. It didn't matter whether you were Somali or Caribbean or whatever. So, issues like that, protecting our children, our young people, protecting our elderly, our families, pushing back against systemic racism in schools, in the healthcare system, in the streets, in our recreation centers, on the basketball court. We should be able to show solidarity with each other and exhibit togetherness. The word unity to me is just really meaningless. Really, it to me it's not. I don't know. It's not as active a word.
Mm.
You get what I'm where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I no, I completely understand. That explain that so beautifully. You're so articulated. It's I completely understand, and I know I won't be really using Unity anymore. But yeah, I have 7 minutes and 26 seconds left on me because I don't have the option to update tomorrow. So I will ask you this one and final question. Um, what does black excellence or black joy mean to you?
Oh boy. Okay,
Yeah.
that's two different concepts. Okay, well, Black excellence basically is bringing the best version of yourself to everything you're doing. Okay.
Mhm.
And Black excellence is also walking in your greatness and understanding that Black people have done some stuff
Mhm.
and you are walking in the continuity of that greatness, whether it's scientists all the way back in the Sahel, in Timbuktu, whether it's, the kingdoms, the goldsmiths, the silversmiths, etc., whether it's more recent ancestors who've invented so many things that make our lives easier today, whether it's freedom fighters from whether it's the 1500s or it's the 1960s. Black excellence is really about walking in that greatness and aspiring to add to it and becoming an even better version of that. And definitely not letting anybody tell you that your melanin is a barrier to your achievement. Black excellence. Black joy? Hmm.
Mhm.
Black joy. My favorite. I even have a segment on Black called the Black Joy File.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
I created it during the pandemic because the pandemic was very um, depressing, and every week we would be reading people's obituary because people were dying
Mm.
that we knew in the community. So Black Joy really is a celebration of your damn self. I mean, come on.
Mm.
And when I say a celebration of yourself, it means a celebration of people who look like you. So whether it's Serena and her incredible achievements, or your aunt who just got an awesome award from the United Way, or your little brother who won the championship and he's 8 years old, that is some black joy. That is, I mean, that is putting happiness on steroids with your black self, like really unbridled, um yeah, just unbridled joy. And there's just a way black people celebrate themselves that is so unique that I totally love. And the more of it I see, the better I feel.
No, you're completely right. Everything you say is just like it's gonna benefit a lot of people at the Black Student Forum event. And I'm really happy you came on to speak with me and you took the time out of your day to speak with me for 30 minutes. I really appreciate that
Thanks
and
for the
everyone else
invitation.
will too. Yeah.
Thanks for
So
the invitation.
that is all the questions I have for you today. If there's anything
Hmm.
else you'd like to say to the audience or add, now.
Listen, um, it's a great time to be alive.
Mm.
You know, I have a dear friend, she was 42 when she died. And I mean, but in that life, she packed everything into it. Pack all the good, the positive that you can pack into the life you have right now. And also remember that volunteer work, it's not free work, it's free opportunity, it's free experience you're getting, and it's free networking to possibly a job. or a paid opportunity that you never would have thought. That's what has happened to me over the last 30 or so years through volunteering. The current job I have, I was hired for because they looked at my resume and saw that I had an entire page of volunteer work. And they were like, "Yeah, we want her because look at this. She's giving all her time to the community in different ways." That's the kind of employee we want. So please, young people, especially young Black people, let's normalize young Black people volunteering and networking in the wider community.
Mhm. Thank you. I will take that to heart. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on with me today.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful experience. I will. Sorry, I'm just gonna stop recording.